Welcome back to the Snowflake Pro certification preparation. We're gonna continue with chapter 4, accounts and security, or account access and security. This was actually the more larger gap between the streams because the last one was 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And then today, after today, and again, I'm gonna have at least, well, until Monday, I'm gonna have a bigger break. But on Monday, we're gonna be back and we're gonna have the whole day. So we can do like really a massive stream. One thing to note, that I actually did use stored procedure now at work. I had a problem I had to face, and I was actually thinking about the book about a solution. Like, can I use this dog, like that multiple tasks would do the thing? Because the problem was that I had a task, and of course, so far I was only using tasks for just one operation, like one load operation. And that's it. But then I was like, what if the task will have multiple things to do? Like, can the task clean up afterwards? And for that, we needed a stored procedure. The stored procedure actually did the thing, and the task is only called basically to use the stored procedure, nothing else, which is very nice. But yeah, unfortunately, we are at this. I already went through this, I would say, account access and security in other courses, and it's something which, I don't think I will be actually interacting with too much in my life. But this part, so I'm gonna open up let's see if it will still work. If I press 7, will it change there? No, because I didn't have the new knock on. So if I press 7, it will go to non-mode. So we cannot have this attitude, because everything we have, it doesn't gonna take forever, right? But everything we have in the book, it should be noted in some ways, because I think I will even delete this and start fresh. So we have a lot of time now, until 10:30 CET, which is very nice. So, and I only have to, like, in 1.5 hours, I have to do my to-do, and then we gonna have one full uninterrupted hour. So network security and policies. By default, users are allowed to connect to Snowflake from any IP address. For greater security, a security administrator can create a network policy to allow or deny access to a specified IP addresses. This can be accomplished by creating IP allowed lists or IP blocked lists, or both. To create network policies, a user must have any of the following privileges. So I'm gonna go slow and steady. Now my problem is that really, like, looking down and reading like this, it's just doesn't seem too much fun. So I'm still thinking if I can just maybe put it here, and I'm gonna read it like this. Maybe. Network policies can be assigned. I will bring some tissues. Network policies can be assigned to a Snowflake account or to a particular user. Although multiple network policies can be created, only a single network policy can be assigned to an account or a user at a time. Once the network policy is associated with an account or a user, Snowflake restricts access to that account or that user based on the allowed IP address list or the blocked IP address list. A user who attempts to log in from an IP address that is on the IP block list or is not on the IP allowed list is denied access. In addition, when a network policy is assigned to an account or a user while they are already connected to a Snowflake, they cannot execute further statements if their IP address doesn't comply with the network policy. Note: when a network policy includes values for the allowed IP address lists and the blocked IP address list, Snowflake checks the blocked IP address list first. As a Snowflake user without administrative privileges, you will not be able to create, assign, or manage network policies, but you can view whether a network policy is set on your account using the show parameters command. When even more security is needed, Snowflake Business Critical Edition supports the AWS Private Link Service. This is an AWS service for creating private VPC endpoints that allow direct, secure connectivity between AWS VPCs and the Snowflake VPC without traversing the public internet. To take advantage of this functionality, your Snowflake account must be in the same AWS region as the AWS VPCs. User authentication. Authentication is the process of identifying users and validating who they claim to be. Snowflake provides several secure authentication features described in more detail in the following sections. Oops. I'm gonna just go autopilot a bit and I'm gonna write it down because really I have a hard time to focus now. Snowflake administrators who have the account admin, sysadmin, or security admin role set up federated authentication. This chapter does not describe the administrative tasks in detail because they are tested on the Snowflake Advanced exams. However, it does describe the authentication features from a user perspective, which should be familiar to Snowflake users and are included in the SnowPro Core exam. Snowflake supports multi-factor authentication to enable increased login security for users connecting to Snowflake. MFA is provided by Duo Security and is included as a Snowflake service. You don't have to sign up with Duo Security in order to use MFA with Snowflake because the support is seamless. You only have to install the Duo mobile application on one of the supported platforms. You can enroll in MFA through the web's interface. Once your enrollment is successful, you then log into Snowflake using the web interface or any of the clients. After your user credentials, you have to also provide the authentication passcode generated by Duo mobile application. When you practice enrolling in MFA using your 30-day free Snowflake trial account, create a new user in your account and practice with this new user. This is just a precaution in case something goes wrong, so that you don't lock yourself out of your first account. To create a new user named first user to practice MFA, use the following command. Once the user is created, log in your Snowflake account as first user. To enroll in MFA, click the down arrow at the top of the left-hand navigation bar in SnowSite to reveal the user menu as shown in figure 4.1, then choose the profile option. In the window that appears, click the Enroll button next to the multi-factor authentication section near the bottom of the window as shown. Blah, blah, blah. In the next screen, okay, I guess let's assume that we know this. Okay, we know how to do this. Don't worry. We've been through this already. Alternatively, if you're experiencing any technical issues with MFA, you can ask your Snowflake administrator to allow you to temporarily bypass MFA and log in directly for a limited time. For example, to bypass MFA for 10 minutes, you can execute the following statement. So, with all due respect, we troubleshooted enough Duo in our lifetime, so we can skip this part. One thing to note that administrator In a federated environment, user authentication is separated from user access using an entity that provides independent authentication of user credentials. Snowflake supports authentication through an external identity provider. Once users are authenticated by the identity provider, they can securely initiate Snowflake sessions without having to log in into Snowflake each time. Snowflake supports most of the SML 2.0 compliant vendors. So in a federated environment, user For example, when federated authentication is configured in a Snowflake account, the login screen in the Snowflake web interface looks similar to what is shown on figure 4.6. And what is figure 4.6? Yeah, I can see it. Instead of typing their username and password, a user connects to Snowflake by clicking the identity provider option on the login page. After that, there are two possibilities to connect to Snowflake. If the user has already been authenticated by the identity provider, they are immediately granted access to Snowflake. If the user has not yet been authenticated by the identity provider, they are taken to the identity provider interface where they are authenticated, after which they are granted access to Snowflake. Okay, let's go back. Instead of going to the Snowflake web interface, the user can choose to initiate their Snowflake sessions from the interface provided by the identity provider. In the identity provider user interface, the user clicks the Snowflake application icon when using Okta or Microsoft ADFS or the custom Snowflake application that has been defined in the identity provider when using another identity provider. This will initiate a session in Snowflake and display the Snowflake web interface. Depending on the identity okay, so A user must log out of both Snowflake and the identity provider. When a user logs out of just a single Snowflake session, any of their other Snowflake sessions remain connected. They can still initiate new Snowflake sessions if they remain logged in the identity provider. Or you have global logout. When a user logs out of the identity provider, all of their Snowflake sessions log out as well. With a web identity provider such as Okta, closing the browser does not necessarily end the identity provider session. As long as the identity provider session is active, the user can still access Snowflake. With respect to session timer, there are 2 in each session. When a user is logged into Snowflake via an identity provider and their Snowflake session expires due to inactivity, they will be asked to authenticate via the identity provider again to continue to work in the expired session. When a user session in the identity provider reaches the defined timeout period, their current Snowflake sessions will not be affected. However, if the user wants to initiate another Snowflake sessions, they will have to log into the identity provider again. Well, but that's the thing, right? So that means we discussed that a session is basically a new SQL. A new sheet is already a new session. So the default timeout period of a Snowflake session is 4 hours. This timeout period can be overridden by creating a session policy that defines the idle session timeout period in minutes. Similarly as with network policies, session policies can be assigned to an account or to a user. A session policy can be assigned to a user. No, a session policy assigned to a user takes precedence over a session policy assigned to an account. To create a session policy, use the create session policy command. This command takes two optional parameters that can be blah blah blah. Both parameters can be a set value, can be set to a value between 5 and 240 minutes. Whenever a session policy has been not set, Whenever a session policy has not been set, Snowflake will use the default value of 240 minutes. Once the session expires, the user will have to authenticate again. Snowflake administrators can implement a detailed access control that allows or restricts access to objects for specific users or roles. They can also define what operations can be performed on objects to which users have access, and they can define which users are allowed to create, modify, and grant access control policies. I will bring a Caro or something. In this model, each object has an owner, and that owner can grant or revoke access to the object to other users or roles. Discretionary. I don't know how to pronounce this. Can you pronounce this? Is there built-in pronunciation? Of course not. Discretionary access control. Dots. In this model, each object has an owner, and that owner can grant or revoke access to the object. In this model, each object is owned by a role, and access is granted to users by assigning the respective role. So I'm going to read all of this and then I'm going to write it down. Before delving into Snowflake access control in more detail, it's important to understand a few key components. Secureable object. Any Snowflake object, such as a database, schema, table, view, store procedure, and so on, to which access can be granted. User. Either a person or a client program that can log into Snowflake and to whom access to secureable objects can be granted. Role. A set of privileges can be granted to a role, and in turn a role can be assigned to a user or to another role. Privilege. One or more allowed types of access to secureable objects, such as the privilege to read or select privilege, or the privilege to modify on, and so on. And the urge to just press the phone and check notification and get lost is just growing and growing and growing the more time we spend. It's really incredible. It's really incredible. And I don't know how you change that. I think really the only way to change that is that, because you know different. Okay, I know I'm gonna start talking about mental health now, but like you have to depersonalize the phone. You have to, because you know you need it for the authenticator. You need it for all of the shits. You know you most certainly need it for work stuff. You cannot be without it. But like depersonalizing, that you just don't have. And it's really, once you get used to this, it's really hard to just not do it. Right? Right? Somebody's coming? Yes, of course. Snowflake secureable objects are organized as a hierarchy of containers. The topmost container is the organization. The next level container is one or more accounts within the organization. Each account contains objects such as databases, users, roles, warehouses, and more. Databases contain schemas, and schemas contain secureable objects such as tables, views, stages, stored procedures, user-defined function, and other objects. This hierarchy of object and containers is illustrated here. So this is something we knew from head. And if we wanna be cool, then we can try to do it. But of course, I don't know that by heart. But anyway. Well, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I can just, yeah, no, I'm not gonna say this. Annoying, tiny bit annoying. Open copy image. You, A secureable object is owned by the role that was used to create the object. This role has the ownership privilege on the object. The same role can be granted to other users, giving them the same level of control over the object as if they had created the object. The role that owns the object has all privileges related to the object, including the ability to grant or revoke privileges on the object to other users or roles, as well as to transfer ownership. All objects in a managed access schema are owned by the schema itself. There are no individual object owners. All privileges on objects in the managed schema can be granted by the schema owner or a role that has the manage grants privilege. User administrators can create and manage Snowflake users, grant and revoke privileges, set default parameters, and reset passwords if needed. A user administrator is a user who has one of the following privileges. To create a new user, a user administrator can use the web user interface in Snowsite or the create user command in SQL. When creating a new user, the Snowflake administrator must also consider the role that will be assigned to the user. Roles can be assigned when the user is created, or they can be granted at a later time. If a user has a default role assigned, this role is used when the user logs into Snowflake and initiates a session. When you assign a default role to a user, this does not immediately grant them the role. You must also explicitly grant the role to the user. Since you haven't created any roles yet, roles are described in the next section, you will create a new user without assigning a role at this time. To create a new user named second user, execute the following SQL command. So that's the problem, because like probably they will expect me to have a first user, and it's not a problem, you're over. didn't expect that it will have a... Can we do it without the rain? I don't need any, like, without the rain. Thank you. Privileges on secureable objects can be granted to and revoked from roles. Roles are then assigned to users to control what actions they may perform on secureable objects. More than one role can be granted to a user. In this case, the user will be able to switch between roles depending on which set of privileges they need to perform an action. A hierarchy of roles can be created by granting roles to other roles. A role that is higher level of the hierarchy inherits all privileges granted to roles at a lower level of hierarchy. Snowflake provides a set of system-defined roles as well as functionality for defining a hierarchy of custom roles. Every Snowflake account includes system-defined roles with the privileges required for account management. These built-in roles cannot be dropped, and the privileges that are granted to these roles by Snowflake cannot be revoked. With the exception of org-admin, the system-defined roles are structured according to a hierarchy in which each role inherits the privileges of all the roles below the current role. Org-admin is a separate system role that is required to perform tasks at an organizational level. So yes, we know this. The org admin or the organization administrator role is used to perform tasks at the organization level. This role can create and manage accounts within the organization, view usage information across the organization, and other related tasks. So, the user admin or the user and role administrator role is used for managing users and roles. This role has the create user and create roles privilege, which allow it to create users and roles in the account. The sysadmin or the system administrator role is used to create virtual warehouses, databases, schemas, tables, and other objects in an account. The public role is granted to every user and every role in the account. Any secureable objects owned by the public role are accessible to other users and roles in the account. The user admin role and any other role with create role privilege can create custom roles. Once a role is defined, it must be granted to a user or to another role in order to take effect. Snowflake recommends creating a hierarchy of custom roles and granting the topmost custom role to the sysadmin system-defined role. This will allow system administrators to access and manage all objects in the account. Granting and revoking privileges. In addition to granting and revoking privileges on existing objects in a schema, Snowflake supports defining privileges on future objects that will be created in a schema. Privileges are managed using grant and revoke commands. Let's walk through an example. You must be logged into Snowflake with a user who has sufficient privileges to create users and role, as well as the ability to grant roles. If you are using 30 days, you should have these privileges. First, use the user admin role to create a custom role named analyst. Then switch to the custom role. No. I'm dead. Ugh. No, I don't know what is the snow. Aha, okay, I get it. So login name, second user. Is it case sensitive? Let's create a second role named Data Engineer that will have full access to the table customer and grant this role to second user as well. Log into your Snowflake account using your initial credentials and execute these commands. Grant all on table customer to role the data engineer. Yes. So this is where we end, and that was 2 hours, 8 minutes, give or take. Nice, nice, nice. I feel like I could have started earlier because I was awake, but it took me a lot of effort to even get started. So I think it's great. And yeah, I mean, I can see myself just like basically typing everything word by word many times. But if I have to choose between that or just being like, like break down and not do it, then I still think doing this, it's still better than nothing, right? And it keeps me engaged, right? Like I do it and I'm just like, okay, there's no question that I'm just doing this right now. So I think really it should help something. And then there's always a point where I start to actually interact with more with the material. So what we should do is really like the quiz. Like we should already get into the quiz and do it next to this because that's gonna, I mean, that's gonna be the test, right? So Monday I'm back.